Welcome back everyone to another video. Today we wanted to touch on a little bit of Dynasty work. Sam and I have a Superflex Dynasty draft coming up in a week or two. And we figured we'd give you guys a little bit of an example of like what we're eyeing at each pick. When it comes down to it, you can see that we each have our two spots in there. These are the picks that we're going to have in our draft. Neither of us are happy by these positions, and I completely understand if you are in the 8 or 9 or 10 in a 12-person league, why you may not be happy in those positions, but that doesn't mean you can't make it work. So we want to give our thought process on a round-by-round take. We're not going to do a full draft here because we'd be here all evening just trying to film a video or just listening to ourselves debate each other about why we should take somebody at a specific area. But what we want to do is we want to break this down by rounds. This video, we're going to be focusing on the first round and our points of view and why we're deciding what we're deciding. And we're going to do that for the first handful of rounds. This way we can give you guys some potential feedback and have you guys understand why we're looking at these people. Okay? So before we kick this off, one of the things that you definitely see in Superflex leagues is obviously they start to lean QB heavy. And if you're not used to that, it can really kind of throw you off throughout your draft because you're just so accustomed to, well, at least I am, and I think Sam's the same way, and taking a QB later. Usually I'm not looking for a quarterback until after round 10 if I'm drafting in a redraft league. So it definitely changes the structure, but you still want to keep in mind that there is QB value later in the drafts. All right, but you also have to be under the assumption that everybody else in your draft is probably going to have 2 quarterbacks by round 5. All right, so as long as you keep that in your mind, then you can kind of gauge your plan out with how you're going in. You think you can build a pretty solid team as long as you do it right. Just remember, you want to draft for value based off of where you are, not because of a system telling you that Patrick Mahomes is next. And with that said, Sam, let's kick it off. Is Patrick Mahomes next?
No, I think Sleeper ADP has this one wrong. I think you have to take Josh Allen here with the first overall pick in a Superflex Dynasty draft here. Josh Allen, I don't know how many years in a row he's a top 3 fantasy QB, but he has rushing upside. We all know that. He's always brought that to the table here. He has the gigantic arm. He always does well. He just has upside that guys like Mahomes and Hurts or Stroud just don't have, and I think he's the easy 101 in the Superflex startup here.
Yeah, this is a 100% agreement from my end here. You won't get an argument from me. I think people are taking Patrick Mahomes at 1, and it kind of blows my mind. And this is no disrespect to Patrick Mahomes. He's next to Tom Brady. He's probably, by the time he's done, finishes like this. Maybe the best, but hands down to probably the second best quarterback to ever play the game when it comes down to it. And I have trouble saying that because I love Peyton Manning. But when it comes down to it, he's just a phenomenal athlete. You got to remember this is fantasy. And that's the thing I want everyone here to understand. Like, this is fantasy football. This isn't like I have Patrick Mahomes behind my offensive line in the Super Bowl. Okay, we're trying to win a fantasy league. Super Bowl is not even relevant.
Right. Yeah, no, we both agree. Mahomes is the best QB in the league, but he's not the best fantasy QB to draft here. So that said, Kyle, you take Mahomes at number 2?
No. Sam and I were just arguing about this before we got on here. And if I'm coming at this from a fantasy perspective, Jalen Hurts is my number 2. And I know people are going to be like, what are you doing? You got Mahomes, you got Stroud, you got Lamar Jackson there at that point, and I will counter that argument every single time that this is fantasy football. Hurts is the Eagles quarterback. He's going to do what he's been doing the last few years, and that is being a force from a fantasy perspective. Do I think he's the best quarterback in the league? No. Do I think he's a top 10 quarterback in the league? No. And I'm an Eagles fan. I don't know if I'd put him in the top 15. It really depends when it comes down to that, but the point is, he's consistent from a fantasy perspective. He's finished in the top 5 the last 3 years since he's been a quarterback. You can't beat that. You got to remember that this is fantasy football, and I don't see that changing this year, next year, or the year after. And that's how I like to approach a dynasty league at this point in my doing fantasy football for as long as I've been doing it. Is if I'm building my team, if I can get a quarterback that I know is going to give me 3 really good years with a chance to win, I'm going to take that chance at the onset, and then I'll start planning for the future at that point when I need to.
Yeah, no, this is obviously one that we disagreed on a little bit here. I take Hurts a little bit later on if I were to do like a full mock draft on my own here. I just like a few of the next QBs a little bit more. With the three pick, then um, most leagues, Mahomes probably won't be available at this stage, but that's what I'm going to be taking here at the three. Again, I know he doesn't have the rushing upside of Hurts or Allen, but last year he finished as QB8, and he really didn't have any weapons around him. I think they kind of reloaded that wide receiver room for him. They have Worthy, they had brought in Hollywood Brown, who just got hurt, but should be back in time for the beginning of the season. Still is Kelsey. I just think he's one of these guys you put in your dynasty, you set him in your lineup every week for the next 5, 6, 7 years, depending on how strong your league is, and you don't have to think about it ever again.
Yeah, I don't dislike him there. Um, I just always look at rushing upside for me, as you know. And I would be going back and forth between him and Lamar Jackson if I'm in the third slot, just to be candid. I understand taking Mahomes. I would never be like, hey, what the heck are you doing if you take him? But when it comes down to it, you have to look at rushing upside, which is why at number 4, it would be Lamar Jackson. And a lot of dynasty leagues that I'm looking at and have seen again in mock drafts, Stroud is going before Jackson and Hurts. I think that's insane. And that is not to say Stroud didn't have an incredible rookie season. He did. It was 1 year. I would need to see it again before I have a little bit more trust in him, and I think he's got it in him to do that. But he's not a rusher. He's not. You can see in the projections here listed under there, rushing 195 yards, maybe 2 touchdowns. He's going to throw a lot of touchdowns, but from a fantasy perspective, Lamar Jackson's generally going to outperform him. And, one thing I just want to add on, this is one of the things Sam and I went back and forth, is like the injury history when it comes to like Jackson and Hurts and those guys. I understand the concern there. I really do, because each of them have been hurt in their careers, but so is Mahomes. Like, it happens to all of them when it comes down to it. But I understand the cautious side of things, but I'm always going to pitch to the air of like, I want to win. And I'm not going to sell myself short. And in those spots, they're the best options.
Yeah, and with the top 4, we have the same top 4 players. It's just the order we kind of slightly disagree on. So
Yep.
if you like Lamar more than Hurts, I think you can make the argument for Lamar at 2 as well. Just really depends. But I think overall, if you have a top 4 pick, you're pretty happy walking away with one of these guys here.
Yeah.
And at the 5, I think the 5 and the 6, you can kind of flip these next 2 QBs, at least how I see them here. But I'm going to take Stroud just because he doesn't have the injury history of Burrow. He did have that sensational rookie season here. They added Diggs to that offense. They had Tank Dell back fully healthy, and Nico Collins was one of the best route runners and best at beating man coverage in the league last year. So I think Stroud's going to continue to get better. I don't know how many 40-point games he'll put up just because of how difficult it is to do as like a pure pocket passer, Stroud. But I think the floor for him is super high, and similar to Mahomes, you set it and forget it, and you really don't have to think twice about him there.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't disagree with you. I think Stroud's a good spot there. And this is where things start to get a little dicey in a Superflex league, because as you're staring at the ADP there, you'll notice that the top 3 receivers are immediately coming up. Can you scroll down a little bit down there too? And you can see we also got a few more receivers and then Bijan Robinson sitting in there in the next 10 picks. All right, and then obviously you have Christian McCaffrey sitting down there too. Now in our other Dynasty League, I'm pretty sure this is where Christian McCaffrey went.
That was to preface someone who's new with Dynasty. But
which is okay. He went. I remember he went around 6 or 7. It's not a knock on the person. I don't fault him for taking McCaffrey. The dude's a monster. He's just older. And that's where you kind of got to hesitate. You got to start looking at different things, right? So if I'm sitting in the 6th spot, or the 7th spot, or the 8th spot, or the 9th spot, this is where I start to go, am I in a better position now to take a top flight wide receiver and look at that tier 2 quarterback position with high upside? Right? So if I'm sitting at team 6, I'm probably leaning towards CeeDee Lamb. I think CeeDee Lamb has the best upside sitting here. He had a monster second half of the season last year. Prescott and him, barring them having continued contract problems, they're going to continue to just be throwing touchdowns all day to each other. Well, to each other. Prescott's going to be throwing them to CeeDee Lamb all day. And I know Sam ate with CeeDee Lamb on his team last year. He was very happy he had him. But I just like CD. I think he showed last year that he is a cut above the rest when it comes to the wide receivers. And that's not a knock on Chase or Jefferson. They're both monsters. I just like the fact that Prescott is on the field. He doesn't get hurt a lot. Burrow has missed time. And JJ has obviously got his rookie, JJ McCarthy, out there, which I'm sure... I don't know if you've seen the video of the deep bomb that McCarthy threw. But it showed Justin Jefferson's reaction to it, all excited. But JJ McCarthy's a rookie. I don't know if I'm 100% sold on him yet. He's got potential. But that's why I lean CD here.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And that's what I did in our first Superflex draft together. I took Jefferson at the 6 rather than Lando. And that's what I'll take at the 7 spot here.
Yeah. They're kind of
I think I think you can really pick your poison. Jefferson showed that he puts up points even when he has Nick Mullen or Josh Dobbs thrown to him. I think that J.J. McCarthy or Sam Darnold are both probably pretty big improvements compared to what he had most of last year after Cousins went down. And like Kyle said, Burrow's got the injury history there. Obviously, he could be elite, so I'm not upset if you take Burrow in at the 6 or 7 here either.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the 6 and 7 are kind of those spots where you can take a wide receiver here and still get pretty good back-to-back QBs in the 2nd and 3rd here.
Yeah. That's what I agree with. And those guys sitting in the 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 right now, it's going to tail off for them getting a position player, which means they might lean quarterback again. So sitting at the A spot, which means this is how I expect the draft to go when it lands on me here. Now, this puts me in a tough position because I have Jamar Chase in another league. And I love Jamar Chase. Dude's a stud, right? But I don't like to stockpile the same player in all my different leagues because if he goes down, all my leagues are just I'm SOL. I'm sitting there with missing a top flight receiver in multiple leagues, and I'm just going to be screwed for a period of time. So I would lean from me, all right, now looking at the ADP, all right, I would lean into Amon-Ra or Bijan Robinson at this stage. I think Bijan's got immense upside. I think Amon-Ra is an absolute monster. If you watch our last video on Woper and RACR, he's a freak. He's really good, especially after the catch. And I see no letting up on his side. So I'm going to take Amon-Ra here.
Interesting. I was not expecting you to go that route.
I told you I was looking at different strategies. And I wasn't kidding.
No, I mean, I kind of agree. When I was doing some mocks for our league, I was a little between who I'd take if I went Chase or St. Brown here. Mm-hmm. Overall, I think I'd still end up going QB, but there is it's pretty tempting to try to take St. Brown or Chase here, especially when you see the kind of wide receivers that come back to the 3rd here in this kind of range. So if those 3 are off the board, I think I'm going Joe Burrow here. I think at the 109, I'd be thrilled if I still get one of those top 6 elite QBs at this stage. I'm hoping this is how our draft shakes out. I guess we'll have to kind of wait and see. But we've seen Burrow be a top 5 fantasy QB. Obviously, the past few years, you've had some issues with injuries here. But hopefully none of them are too serious, and they're just kind of bad luck more than anything else. And if he could, stay healthy and stay in the field and still has Chase and Higgins and now Jermaine Burton and Chase Brown, all those guys, I think he could put up another monster year here.
Yeah, he's just a really good quarterback. When you're talking from a pure QB side of things, I'd put him there with Mahomes. He's just really smart. He's got a really good arm, and he reads the field really, really well. He just has not been as blessed with Patrick Mahomes when it comes to health.
Yeah.
And it's a damn shame. I hate seeing that happen when a player's career gets derailed due to injuries because you just see what could have been. And hopefully that it's not him. He's obviously healthy this year. He's looking good right now. And I just remember last year I had him in my redraft league, and it stung losing going into the playoffs and everything. So, all right. So with Team 10 sitting here, this is definitely going to be a scenario where if you're a novice, I think they take Caleb Williams or Anthony Richardson. I think I would have to definitely take Jamar Chase in this position. I think you'd be a fool not to, because you're going to be able to take a quarterback on the way back. But you're not going to. Jamar Chase is going to be gone, guaranteed. So you're taking Jamar Chase here, which is in our draft here, fallen a few spots technically by ADP, and that's okay. You get a value pick sitting at 10.
Yeah, I wouldn't be shocked to see Chase fall in a lot of drafts to kind of like the 9, 10, 11 range. Although when it comes to Superflex, I do prefer just going QB early here. So if Chase goes at 10 and I'm team 11, the guy I'm going to go with is Anthony Richardson.
It's not Caleb Williams.
It's tempting. I just think that Richardson has such great, rushing upside there. He only had the two full games last year, but
Yeah.
he was a monster in them. I think he, similar to like the Hurts and like Jackson kind of mold there, assuming he actually can stay healthy this year, he has that top 5 upside. It's just, again, staying on the field is what it really comes down to.
That's the problem, right? I don't know. His sample size is too small for me to really judge. How many games did he play last year in the regular season?
2 full games.
Two
That's
full
all he played.
games. Yeah, there's nothing there for me to even judge whether or not I would even consider him. But at team 12 in this draft, you're sitting in an interesting position, right? Because now you have obviously rookie quarterback Caleb Williams, but you have 2 absolute stud running back and wide receiver young options. And the thing is, in Superflex, if you're in this position, those quarterbacks that you think are going to be halfway decent are going to be gone at your next wraparound. So you are forced to pass on one and take a quarterback with the other. All right? So in this scenario, I don't like Caleb Williams. I can't. I just can't do it. Jordan Love. I think Jordan Love is the better option in this scenario. I loved what I saw from him the latter half of last year. He looked like he really got his stuff together, and I think he brings immense upside. I think he's only going to improve as soon as they figure out their wide receiver room. I think they got a bunch of jury's out on Jaden Reed, but I think they got a bunch of like B wide receivers sitting there, and they're all just fighting in the room together. There's no A plus receiver there. And if they give him one of those, I think it's going to be disgusting, which is why I know they were bidding so hard for Ayuk. So who knows if that'll happen.
Yeah, no, I agree with you on Love. I kind of have him flip back and forth between him and Richardson there. I agree that he should go above Caleb Williams, though, but you might get lucky and have someone take Williams before, Love or Richardson in your draft and be able to snag them a bit later.
Yep. So let's pause there real quick. So that's our round 1. And that's how I foresee it panning out. You'll notice there's no running backs in this league at this point. I think if a running back's going in the first round in your Dynasty Superflex, someone's doing something wrong. And shame on them when it comes down to it. They're just going to be hurting themselves. But you will definitely see some running backs start coming off in the second round. Hey everyone, just wanted to come on here real quick as a quick edit to this video. We were originally doing just one long video for rounds 1 through 3. We realized that this was just way too long of a video, so we trimmed it up. We're taking the first round here, and the next video that you guys see coming out will be the second and third round. This way you're not sitting here for 40 plus minutes in a row, and you can just take the content at face value. We're deciding whether or not we want to split this up into individual rounds going down, but we figured rounds 2 and 3 went a lot quicker than round 1. So we figured that this was the right route. We appreciate you checking out this video. If you haven't already, please take the time and subscribe and like and comment. And we would definitely love to engage with you guys and get your thoughts. As you can see, listening to Sam and I go back and forth in this, we are definitely a little opinionated, and that's the fun part about all this. So we love getting into little debates about why people feel certain players should go at specific spots. So we'd love to hear from you. Thanks.